still think you can see.
Sorry.
I have been in education and graduating middle school students in education for about 20 years, but graduating middle school students in New Jersey for the last 7 years from the Red Oak School. So I have a great deal of experience. I ran the placement program there, and I have a lot of experience and a lot of relationships with all the schools and all the admissions offices in New Jersey.
Good evening, everyone. I am Robin Aronow of School Search NYC is my company. And I have been consulting with Sharon since she started the New York branch, which was Bilingual Buds back then, and now is HudsonWay. And I will be working with 7th graders in the spring and 8th graders in the fall and winter, as they were applying out both to public and private schools in New York City. So thank you for all coming tonight. I would like to say that unless you've got something going on in the background, it would be lovely to see your faces. It's hard to talk to dark screens and names. So I encourage you to put yourself on camera if you can. Thank you. Nice to meet all of you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And we do have some current parents in the audience, and you know, this is going to be as we go through towards the end, and I invite some of the parents to share some of their experience. In particular, we have some parents that have actually exmissioned some of their children into ongoing schools. And again, it's always wonderful, I know, to hear from a current parent. But with that, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we will get into our presentation here. Okay, so let me start with the first. Oops, here we go. Okay, a look at exmissions. So, okay, I think all of you must be at this point familiar with our mission. We go back to this as our compass to make sure that we're staying on track. What our goal has always been is to prepare students with knowledge, skills, and character to become meaningful global contributors. And that has pointed us to doing our best to providing all of that skills, character, and continuing to develop them into global citizens. So many of you know the benefits of immersion, and again, we use this in our information sessions with new parents. But I think it bears repeating here because it's relevant to why we've all come to this school and what we hope to gain through the number of years that we are here, which is, you know, the going through an immersion process changes the plasticity of the brain, makes kids smarter, better problem-solving skills, creativity. I know I've seen that with many of the students in the school. It is the most efficient way to second language fluency, and we know that learning a subject in the language is the best way. Improving social emotional skills, perspectives, that's part of being a global citizen. And ultimately, you know, one of the goals of many parents is that this will give our children advantages and global advantages, especially as competitive as things have become. So this focus on immersion, you know, as Robin stated, as we started, we started as the preschool as Bilingual Buds, and actually as 100% or 90-10 in the 3s and the 4s, with gradually seeing that unless we continued through elementary and middle, we weren't going to achieve what we wanted to as far as developing global citizens. But we also found that by going up in grades, we're taking advantage of the cognitive benefits that come with immersion. So it's to that end really that step by step, starting as a preschool, and then we made the move to go to K-5 in elementary. And it's only recently, with the move to the new space in New York, and recently as we had some older students in New Jersey, that we decided to add on the middle school, which we're calling here grades 6, 7, and 8. I wanted to point out this chart, which is a COGAD, and this is a test that we had given in the past several years for kindergarten through grade 5. We didn't do it in the past 2 or 3. We've had COVID and so many other assessments, but it's an assessment that we did that is based on looking at reasoning and problem solving. And students will fill out a mastery of puzzles and different things that get at those skills. It's not a test like the ERB, which is testing what you've learned. This is more about your reasoning ability. And what's interesting about this, and we did this when if any of you current parents remember when Elizabeth Willem was here, we correlated this because we were interested in whether or not our students, and these are HudsonWay students that you see on this chart, whether or not their reasoning and problem solving improves over time in immersion, which if you look at the y-axis, this is number of years at HudsonWay. And then the green bar is gifted and the yellow bar is above average. So you see on the far right, the remaining is average. So what this is showing us is if you come in year 1, after 1 year, 64% are above average or gifted, but the more time at HudsonWay, the more the development of the reasoning and problem solving. So there's a correlation, and I like to have parents understand that this is what immersion does to the brain, and I believe that at HudsonWay we're executing in a way in which it's also supporting that, and learning in 2 languages is really developing that problem solving. Over the past years, we have had students from HudsonWay Exmission at all various points. As I mentioned, when we started out, we were only going up through grade 3, our students, and so some would leave in various points, and they've been accepted at the schools that you hear of, and top tier schools, all kinds of schools. They run the range, and in New Jersey, also these are independent schools. Of course, we have some students that go on to public schools in both New York and New Jersey, which I'm not showing here the list of those public schools. That's dependent on the town. And then also in New York, there's of course the Gifted and Talented program. We've had students get into a number of those in kindergarten, specifically music, special music school, which is a really tough one to get into. But over the years too, we've been developing our relationship with these schools. As we've had more students ex-mission, we've gotten to know the admissions directors, and Robin has been very helpful, and Nellie with all of her connections in the New Jersey and New York markets as well. We'll get more into that as we talk about the support of how we support ex-missions. I wanted to share this data point, this chart here, and hope you can see it here, because this is looking at the students for the past 7-8 years that have here 7 years, 2014 through 21, in the New York students that we have. And what this is showing are the students that have left in preschool through grade 4. These are all the students with all of the schools that they applied out to. So, for example, if we had 25 students, they applied to 5 schools each. we'd be looking at 125 student applications. How many of those did they get accepted? And so we broke apart this data to look at those that applied out in preschool through grade 4 and those that applied out grades 5 through grade 7. So what this is saying is that 47% of those applications were accepted. It's not saying only 47% of students were accepted. All the students landed someplace. But students, what we tend to find in the younger cohorts is that because all of the students, so many of them are applying in grade K, which is the typical entry point for a K-12 ongoing school, parents are applying to 8, 10 schools. And of course, some of them on the list are ones that are notoriously very selective. And so their chances of getting into those may be dependent on so many factors that have not much to do with the student, legacy, sibling, things like that. What we have found for the students that have applied out grades 5 through 7, their list of schools is typically smaller, and they are able to get in to the schools that they apply to 90% of the time. And I've listed here those particular schools that they've gotten into. And some of these students have gotten into, many of them, every single school that they have applied to. So it's been a really surprising and exciting, I think, outcome for us to see that these students have landed and found the school that they feel is best and they're most comfortable with. Want to show some data for the New Jersey. This is also going over the last several years. And this is a little bit different because different analysis, because we don't have, we have a couple of the schools in the New Jersey market that only start accepting students in 6th grade. And that's Morristown Beard here and Newark Academy. So what we have seen here is a comparison of looking at all the students that have applied out in grades 5 and up. Where did they apply? Where did they get in? And, and then general is what is what is out there in terms of published of what is their acceptance rate. And this is, we looked at niche, for example. So niche reports that, let me take you through an example. Newark Academy. So of our students that applied out, 56% of them got accepted, and in the general market, their admissions rate is much lower, 28. Pingree, 72% of our students were accepted, and the general admissions on niche is 30%. And then Kent Place and Morristown, we've gotten all of our students accepted there, grades 5 and up, of course. And then, I have some other ones where we did get some student accepted, but the numbers were so small that I didn't feel comfortable saying it as a percentage. But it's exciting to see that the word is getting out. And what's really nice too is when I hear from the staff members of a Kent Place or teachers of some of these schools at Pingree, and they come back and they say, wow, the students that we've gotten are so great. We'd love to have them all. Or we've even had teachers of these schools now applying for their own children to come to our school. And so that's the case with 2 or 3 of these schools in New Jersey. Actually, in one school in New York, which is great. So I wanted to just reflect a little bit and share some of the thoughts on what I believe are some of the reasons for the higher acceptance rates that we're seeing in upper grades as opposed to lower grades. And I'm referring more to the New York slide where we had the comparison of the numbers 47 and 90 or so. You know, students that are older and have stayed in our program are able to show themselves, they're able to present themselves, they've come into their own, and especially their biliteracy skills, because by then they've developed a very strong ability to read and write and speak, and that's unique. And high schools love that because these are students that can go into their upper levels of language classes, and they can promote them as students as they're applying off to college. I've also heard from parents that the small class size that we have and our ability to differentiate has really provided an advantage for our students. So they are able to have good scores, good test scores, good overall development, and this has, and when they've transitioned, they've done well. The other advantage to waiting, frankly, is that classes open up at many of these schools. In New York, you have several of these top tier schools. In grade 6, they open up new classes, more space, and even in grade 9, it can even be easier to admission at that point. So these are some of the reasons that I've thought of are an advantage to staying on and exmissioning at a later point. Just wanted to read one of the testimonials, experience of one of the parents in New Jersey. You can read it here. I'll just paraphrase. Madison felt that her son was well prepared, confident to start in the public school in grade 6. HudsonWay gave him a great foundation. He tested into the accelerated math, the highest class offered, and is doing well. And I attribute this to the ability to offer differentiated learning and individual attention that can only be provided through small class sizes and excellent teachers. So that's great to hear, and that's, I would say, typical of some of what we've heard from parents that have moved on. Wanted to share a video here from 2 families also in New Jersey on their transition and their experience, and you'll hear a short video from 2 students and then their parent on the Spanish and then the Mandarin side. You'll probably recognize them, some of the families that are here.
There's Gallon. I'm 13 years old. I'm in 7th grade at Kent Place School, and I was at HudsonWay in the Spanish track from when I was 2.5 years old until the end of 5th grade. I think that HudsonWay has definitely helped develop my confidence and independence going into Kent Place, and I also feel like learning the Spanish language has helped me broaden my knowledge with different cultures
at the school. So the greatest impact I've seen after Sarah going through HudsonWay is really her confidence as a student, as a person, and also her love for education, her love for learning across the board, and her appreciation for other languages and other cultures. The world has gotten so small, and so it's not just about America and speaking English. And so it's just broadened who she is and where it can take her in the future.
Hi, Matt Fallon from New Jersey. I went to HudsonWay through 5th grade. I was on the Chinese immersion track, a Spanish after-school track. After HudsonWay, I moved on to Hungary, where I like to swim and talk with friends, and I've just recently graduated from Hungary, and I've also recently just gone to the Olympic trials for swimming and placed well.
Leaving Hudson Way Immersion School, he passed a series of examinations. He got a 5 on the AP, did very well in the HSK series. And so he was fairly well advanced even as a middle schooler entering Pingree, and they were able to accommodate him by promoting him to higher level Chinese within the school. But in terms of applying to college, it was definitely an added benefit to have a traditional American child whose parents speak only English on a native basis to apply, and that was definitely an added advantage to his college applications.
Okay, I wanted to, before we actually get to that, we've got some parents in the in the New York school, because I also wanted to give that a voice here. Wondering if Lisa, if you're in the audience, would you like to introduce yourself and share some of your experiences?
Sure, Sharon. I'm Lisa Huang. I'm a parent in the New York campus. I've had 3 kids go through Hudson Way, 1 who is still there, 2 that have exmissioned out, and we've been with the school since, I think, nearly inception in New York City back in 2009 or 8, around there. So my kids all started through the preschool program, starting at age 2, 2.5. My older one exmissioned out in 6th grade, so she finished through 5th grade, and has since moved on and is a 7th grader at Chapin. And my second also started in preschool at 2 or 3 years old, and he left last year and is now a 5th grader at collegiate. We've had very smooth transitions, given especially COVID year this year, smooth in terms of academically, socially, the children have really just fit right in. And I think similar to the testimonials we heard from the parents that reported, I think the Hudson Way education really helps them stand out through the application process. I think the education did give them the confidence. The bilingual mindset certainly helps, especially now as they're learning their 3rd language at the new schools. So overall, it's been a great experience. So we still have our 3rd one there, and we'll keep her there for a while. And we're feeling a little bit better with exmissions for her. So we don't even know when we'll transition her out, but we're happy where she is now at Hudson Way.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And we just have a couple more slides to talk about the report, and then we can open it up for some Q&A. So let me go back to sharing my screen here. Okay. So Robin, would you like to start?
Sure. Can I just ask who's ever, if you can mute yourselves, everyone? Appreciate that. Thank you. And so I started last year in the spring of 7th grade with students with a workshop. Did a 2-hour workshop for our families about the whole process of applying to both public and private schools, everything they needed to be thinking about, timelines, resources, all of those kinds of things, made that available to them. We have a Google document where people can go in and look at a variety of different resources that I've made available to parents. After the presentation, I then had the opportunity to meet one-on-one with each family. We did it remotely this year. We'll see what happens in the spring. We might be able to do that in person. But we did it remotely. And that was the time where we came up with a preliminary list of schools. For this year, we have 3 graduates, and some are applying only to public, some are applying to public and private. We don't have anyone who's just applying to private this year. But anyway, we came up with our preliminary list, talked about where they should get their information from. And then I continued to provide email updates and reminders to them about everything that was going on in the process to make sure that they weren't going to miss any deadlines, knew about open houses, things like that. In the fall of 8th grade, I meet with families again, and we review the list of schools that they are thinking about, put together a final list, again, both public and private. And we encourage all of our families to look at both public and private. We don't say that one is better than the other. Public because it's a given that you can get a placement in New York City. I encourage all of my families to make sure they're going through the public school process, even if they have their hearts set on private, but we follow their lead. I am also responsible for entering all the students into the New York City Public School database. It's called My Schools. It's their new application platform. I put in all of the information, generate codes so that parents can get into their own My School accounts. And then also in the fall for our families, our kids who are applying to private school, I do interview prep with them. There may be some public schools that are also requiring interviews, and when we find that out, I will do interview prep with those students as well, but primarily it's for students applying to private schools. Then in the fall and the winter, maintain dialogues with families, both through email, through updates, through however parents get in touch with me. I will be starting in January for those students who are applying to private schools, making phone calls to New York City private schools on their behalf, advocating for them. We will also, the results for high school come out about the middle of February, and it will continue through the middle of March when parents have to give their final decisions, and we'll be tracking wait lists as well and how to handle those. And then back on the public school front, I'm going to go back in and submit data related to grades that our students have. We've sort of come up with a rubric for translating the HudsonWay report cards, and grades will be entered into the system. And then by the spring, by middle of March, the private school process is done. With public schools, it's an ongoing thing, and COVID has not helped. But hopefully we will know about placements by April or so, and then there will be wait lists to monitor there as well. So the process is very complete, starting in the spring of 7th grade and going all the way until the last child receives a placement, even if that takes us to the summer, right before a school is starting 9th grade.
Great. Thank you.
And I'll just add one other thing that Sharon said, that they've developed good relationships with the private schools in New York City. I've been doing this for a very long time myself. I forgot to mention that I've been doing this about 25 years. And I've developed good relationships with private schools as well. That doesn't mean your kids are getting in, but it does mean that I'm able to share information easily with them.
Great. Thank you, Robin. And in New Jersey, we benefit so much from Nellie's experience with the middle school students.
Yes, in New Jersey, we have a similar process starting in 7th grade. That also includes helping students choose the right fit for them, the right school for them. I like to tell parents that we have a lot of very good public high schools in New Jersey, so that's always an option. There's also good specialized programs, IB programs, and depending on the district that you live in, there's some fabulous options for specialized programs that are also competitive, and also you need to apply, you need to take a test, and you need to be interviewed for those, as well as all the private schools in the area. We work with the students to make a list, and what I tell parents and students is, don't rank things. Don't start saying this is my first, this is my second, this is my third. apply to all of them as if you want to go to each one of them individually. And, once you get multiple acceptances, that's the time to do your ranking. I encourage kids and parents to have a safety school, just right schools and reach schools. It is time consuming to apply to high schools, more so than to apply to college. So it's a matter of, if you want to apply to 3 or 4 or 5, it's very doable. We help with we don't help with the essays, but we're there. If students want to run essays by their teachers, we're there to give feedback to students. And we also practice interviewing skills. We have a rubric for that, and we provide some practice to students so that they become comfortable and effective interviewers. The more you practice, the more natural it looks. And then I follow up with the schools. I call the admissions directors. I've met most of them, and I used to make time to go and have lunch with everyone before COVID. And so I know them. I've known them for many years and have excellent relationships. So I'll call the schools and advocate for the kids. And, the school will also help you track recommendations and help you track deadlines and so on, because every school has its own profile for admissions. There is one of the things I would like to see us do, which we haven't done so far, but I think we'll start looking for is a partner that will help us do some IC prep, because IC it's the same company as the ERBs, but it's a very long test. And it's also a test that has the 7th and 8th grade IC, the 8th grade test that goes into 9th has questions that are 10th grade. And so it's a strategy, right? So if you have to know that you're going to see things that you have never seen before and not get stuck there or nervous or anxious. And you're also not penalized for wrong answers. So I always tell kids, just answer what you know and then go back and answer everything, because you always have a chance to get it right. So, there's strategies. So you have to pace yourself to take a test that is this long as well. So a little bit of practice is helpful. A little bit of, you're not really teaching content, you're teaching test taking strategies. And so, with that, we provide support to every family until, again, as Robin said, until everybody's placed, until everybody is in a school of their choice.
That's great. And Nellie, all of your experience, that was such an important aspect of your background that we were excited about, is the middle school piece and the excellent track record that you had in getting students into these independent schools in New Jersey. Okay. Just to summarize some of the points that we've made this evening before we get to the Q&A, because I'm seeing some questions in the chat. So we've had an excellent track record of exmissions. I have to say the students, particularly those that have, we really didn't know what to expect. And, we can't take all the credit, of course. These are great families that have come and joined our school. But, we're very happy to see that our students are getting placed and getting placed well. The other point here is that the acceptance rates to these independent schools, from our information, our data, it has improved with time at HudsonWay. And we see this in particular where we're comparing in New York kids that are leaving at pre-K versus those that are staying longer. The trend is, as we are getting more established entry program and are growing our middle, is that more and more families are staying. And, we do hear that families leave because the class sizes get small as they go up. But if we are liking what we're doing, our hope is that we can keep those cohorts together, and it's an advantage to all of us to stay. So that's a point that I urge those of you that are in the lower grades to think about. The parent comments that we've gotten, and this is kind of a summary of what I have heard, but also some of the testimonials that you heard tonight, that that it is challenging to maintain the language after leaving Hudson Way. I mean, we do know that there are some heritage programs that parents have done, but it's still just 2 hours on the weekend. And I saw it with my own kids after leaving after grade 5. It is a challenge to maintain. Students have done well in some areas, are not as challenged in some subjects. Certainly in some public schools and even in some private, at some elite schools in math and other areas, not as challenged. We've heard that students have transitioned well socially. I think that is an area of concern given some of the small class size, but it hasn't seemed to be something that students had difficulty once they transitioned to a bigger school. And fourthly, that students were not at a disadvantage in English. The final point is that with the support of Robin, who I'm really glad to be working with, because she knows our school. She's known me and heard about our school for so many years. To have her support and Nellie's support for our older students is something we're excited to develop, because we know that's an important part of admissions. So with that, I'd like to go to the chat and begin with the first question here about walking through the process. Can we share how recommendation letters are done, and can we support applications to out-of-state schools? I don't know if Robin or Nellie would like to answer that.
Sure, I can speak for New Jersey. Most schools in New Jersey will use automated systems now. And so you'll get, once you apply to a school, they will direct you to a website where you then put the emails of the teachers. The emails, when you put the emails in, it triggers a recommendation request for the teacher. And it's usually a form letter. And it's a form that you fill in. Usually in it, there are a lot of questions about social, emotional development and executive skills. There's a lot about being collaborators, responsible leadership, integrity, a lot in all of these applications. And then there is a couple of other areas for short comments. So they're really not letters of recommendations, they're paragraphs. And often there are 3 words that would describe your child, that would describe the child and the family. And finally, they often ask if a student is late or absent a lot, and whether student misses work frequently. They often are very pointed about this. And so we fill the letters. I ask the teachers to fill them within 2 weeks and then send them to me. I like to read them before they go out, and then we send them back to the schools. So that's how it works. Occasionally, we still have some that are paper, but in the last few years, that has really changed.
I agree with Nellie. The process is exactly the same in New York City, except that after the teachers write their recommendations, I think we decided Nellie's going to take a look and then I'm going to take a final look. And then those recommendations will be sent out. The way I work is that I want all of them in by the winter break. They're usually not due until the first week in January or so. But I like to know that they're in before the winter break so that I and the rest of the staff can relax like everyone else. So that's what our goal is for getting them out. And I have in past, I haven't done this at Hudson Way, though we actually have a student who's applying or has applied to schools in London. But I have worked with families who are applying out of state. The recommendations don't tend to be so different from one another. and we will just send them to wherever you're applying.
Great. Okay, thank you. So question for Robin, any specific high schools that you feel are a great match for Hudson Way students?
You know, I think that every high school, private high school, and if we're talking about private schools, public schools are a whole nother discussion, but you know, I think any private school is a good place for a Hudson Way student. There's such a variety of private schools in New York City, from small ones to bigger ones, ones that are in the city, ones that have campuses, those that are more traditional, those that are more progressive. And so I'm looking more at an individual child and their learning style and what they're looking for in terms of making recommendations about schools, as opposed to saying that this group of schools, you know, is right for Hudson Ways. And I think that based on the list that Sharon just showed us, our kids have gone to a wide variety of schools in New York City. In terms of the, you know, Mandarin component, that's a slightly different issue. There is, you know, one other school in the city that has a bilingual Mandarin program also that continues through 12th grade. So some families consider that school. But there's also a variety of other private schools that offer Mandarin. Your kids will probably be at a higher level than students that are there. But I think we just heard from a family from New Jersey that said that the school that their child went to, they were willing to make accommodations for them. There are a lot of schools out there now, both public and private. I have to tell you, I went to an open house for a public school last night, and a lot of them are making available individualized computer sort of classes for students who are at a different level in all subject areas, but in particular in languages. And so I think that we'll find more and more schools that are accommodating of kids who would like to continue on with their Mandarin backgrounds here.
Great, thank you. Understanding that the majority of the process we've talked about is focused on 7th and 8th grade, can you speak to students who leave earlier, such as 4th, 5th, 6th?
You want to take that, Sharon?
Yeah, I guess I could take that. Well, you know, we do support in exmissions, but it may not be the full support with the ISEE that Nellie spoke of, or the interview prep, because frankly, our goal is to support students, you know, mostly hoping that they will continue to the end of the line, because that's how we support our vision and mission to really develop these citizens. But the track record shows that we have, our students have gotten into great schools because we've done they've had great recommendations from their teachers. We've in some cases, done the support that Nellie spoke of, which is talking to the schools about our students. They know us. I would say pretty much everything except for maybe the interview prep and the ISEE, which I think are reserved for those that really what I would call the full support package.
I don't know if it's helpful, but I can vouch for the support and ease of transition, because our older daughter transitioned to Spire in 4th grade, and it was seamless and easy, and Spire knew everything about the school, and math curriculum was advanced, and the transition was very easy, and so the process was not difficult at all.
Thank you, Anya. And we love Spire and Jackie, and they've been to our school many times. In fact, the person that I was, one of their admissions people is looking at our school for their youngster. So, yeah. Any other questions? I hope it was clear in terms of the data and, the experiences. And, it is exciting. It's exciting to see the kids that have left do well and, but most importantly, finding their best fit school. And they know so much more about what they're looking for as they're spending more time developing themselves. A question, do we provide any guidance to students on test prep? Do you want to take that one, Nellie?
Yes, I think that, we can provide guidance to students and to parents. Test prep is helpful. It's helpful to do it in intense amounts just before the test. I'd say start about 6, 7, 8 weeks before, once a week, twice a week. Once a week is fine. It really, the purpose is not to teach content for the most part. That's not really what it's about, but to practice the test enough so that you know what they're asking, how they're asking it, and that the child is not nervous and has the stamina to get through the test. And it is, for many kids, see how you do in your ERBs is very similar to how you do in your ICs with minimum of practice. But for some students, I have seen dramatic improvements in results with test prep, like 1 or 2 stay nines of improvement. And I think that in those cases, I often think they're children that think too much, Standardized tests are better when you answer what you think it is and you move on. And if you think too much, then you start thinking, well, if it was like this, then it would be A. If it was like that, it would be B. If it was the third scenario, it might be C. And then that kind of student needs test prep and it can make a big difference. But overall, what I have found is that students, the ERBs are a very good predictor of IC scores overall.
Great.
Looks very cool. Looks very cool, Mason.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I know that those of you who may be thinking about this and want to ask further questions, we have parents at the school that could, I'm sure, be willing to be connected. And so let us know, myself or Nicole, know if you'd like to connect with the parent and we can make those introductions, or just questions about the process please direct those to us, and we look forward to being here, a resource for you. Thank you so much for joining this evening's session.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Everyone.
Mm.